So the session is recorded, and also we are now on YouTube. Yeah, so probably we can start.
Good morning, good day, good evening, everybody. Today we have a privilege to have a lecture by Anton Skaruba, who was the person who initiated this wonderful webinar ToGo. We have had wonderful lectures during the last 3 months. And today, in the last session, Dr. Anton Skaruba will present the topic sustainability and sustainability indicators, what, why, and how. Anton is senior researcher at Estonian University of Life Sciences, great specialist on biodiversity governance, urban planning, science policy interfacing, leads several projects, including our wonderful Erasmus project on Intense. Then Anton, please, the line is yours.
Thank you, Kali, for your kind and very warm words. Let me see how this works. So can you see the slides?
Yes, please continue.
So it is in the presenting mode now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you again, Khalif, and very good morning, everyone. We had a lot of wonderful sessions, as Khalif just told, and the umbrella for all kind of different topics we heard, it was sustainability. And probably it is the right time to speak about what's actually the sustainability. We heard so much about its components and its different parts and all kind of drivers and factors. So probably now we can a little bit sum up. To sum up, I have chosen the topic of sustainability indicators. So we are going to discuss why they're needed, what they are, and how we're going to use them. And also that's a short opportunity to discuss in short, actually, the approaches to sustainability and what we shall do and how we can use the indicators to make this concept operational. So this is the structure of the talk today. As I told, this is about what and why. What makes sustainability indicators good? What is the main challenge with designing good sets of sustainability indicators? What we shall measure and how we do this, and why participatory process has value in the development of sustainability indicators. So here are just some basic definitions to give a short introduction to the topic. One is that sustainability indicators are concise information systems that provide quantitative and qualitative information about the condition and trajectory of a system and why certain trends occur in a specified context. This one is taken from a wonderful book by Bell and Morse on sustainability indicators. Just my absolute recommendation if you want to learn more about this. And indeed, when we design these indicators, usually we persuade some policy-related purposes, such as clarifying goals, describing trends, analyzing conditions, projecting developments, inventing, evaluating, and selecting alternatives. And this comes from another wonderful book by Clark about the policy process, where sustainability indicators are given quite a lot of space. Good indicators should be simple, they should be measurable, they should be feasible, they should be flexible, dynamic, and user-inspired. For instance, let us imagine us designing a set of sustainability indicators for the enclosure of the urban park with veteran trees. This is something you will see on the picture. I took it in Giardini Pubblici in Milano. Indeed, when we are speaking about the indicators that would show how good these trees are and how good the conditions for them, first of all, we'll perhaps look at the green leaves and see are they in a good condition, are there any spots, and so on. So it's kind of very easy thing, and that indeed would be very simple. It's absolutely measurable. It is feasible. You don't have a lot of money actually to just check on the leaves, unless you do some complex analysis with them. Then indeed you can look at what is the soil cover and what is the litter cover, how they're feeling, like whether we have some soil compaction, which is an unhealthy thing for trees, and is it like littered, is it only leaf litter or any other kind of debris. And this is also relatively simple, straightforward, and absolutely feasible and measurable thing. Then we probably can pay attention to air quality. In a big city like Milan, indeed, air quality is, can be an issue, and it can be an important driver for wetland trees to feel good or feel bad. So these kind of very simple things, like when we discuss whether all these components are simple, measurable, feasible, flexible, dynamic, and user-inspired, we are mostly talking about not only what we can measure and not only what is the best to measure to understand how well the wetland trees are feeling themselves. But first of all, we are discussing actually our policy and our societal context, the capacities we have, and what we actually can do. If we have good budget for this monitoring program, then indeed our measurement program can be more expensive. It can be also more efficient in terms of how much we know about the development of the trees and all the potential threats. For instance, indeed, we might look not only at leaves, but also to do some more complex analysis. What's happening with the leaf? What is the percentage of the chlorophyll? How much cells are damaged from time to time if you have budget for this? Then when we're looking at soil, probably we're not only looking at compaction processes and in debris on the soil, but yeah, we can make some more complex chemical analysis to understand actually how good the soil is. We can take measurements of the soil moisture to see is it enough water in the streets, and I can imagine that water stress in a southern city like Milan can be an important thing. So in that case, we need to bring some water. Indeed, there are many ways to understand what is the air quality. Like if we don't have much budget, then the feasible thing for us would be probably to find any kind of publicly available information on the closest to this park spot where air quality is measured and where it is made available, for instance, online. If we have sufficient budget, then indeed we may put some analyzers on this very spot and have better data to understand what's going on specifically here. And indeed, all this data and the need for all this kind of data, it depends not only on what we can measure and what is measurable and what we have money for, but it also indeed depends on what kind of data we need, who are going to be the users of this data. Probably we're going to get all kind of highly detailed and very expensive to get information about the state of this enclosure and the state of air, soil, and leaves. But who will be reading this data? Who will be making conclusions based upon this data? Probably the person who, or several persons who will be doing this, they just wouldn't need this. They wouldn't understand what these data are, and they just would put them on shelves. That happens a lot, unfortunately. So basically, when we're designing kind of indication or monitoring program, that's very important to understand that who are the users, and the indicators we use, they should be user-inspired indeed. There are some problematic issues in this sustainability indicator business. Like as Laszlo Pinter in his wonderful report on sustainability indicators back in 2005 has found, we are continue to moving towards an indicator zoo characterized by a multitude of approaches, but still limited impact on policy and outcomes that are priorities for sustainable development. And here the problem, a lot of scholars, researchers, or any kind of practitioners, they're entering to this sustainability indicators field, and very often they attempted to come up with their own indicating system, and they're promoting it because, well, indeed, if you have done something, you always tend to promote it. And as a result, we have huge diversity of all kinds of sustainability indicators, simple, more complex, composite. We'll talk about this a little bit later. And policymakers, this diversity of indicators, it doesn't provide any help at all, actually. That confuses them immensely. They do not know what to use. And actually, in this situation of confusion, they all quite often asking for kind of new indicators they could understand. And that's kind of a little paradox of the field of sustainability indicators. We have a lot of them, but rather very few of them are really influential and really make sense for actual users. So let's speak about the key challenges of sustainability indicators. The key challenges coming, first of all, from this problem. The very concept of sustainability is lacking consensus. Let us review two definitions of what is sustainable coming from different sectors and from different time. The first one I want to offer to suggest to you, it's coming from 1987 from the seminal Our Common Future report. It says that sustainability is something that not compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that says that, first of all, this definition is wonderful for this thing. It is introducing the concept that still sounded quite new at that time of the intergenerational equity. So it means that the next generations shall enjoy at least similar or the same amount of, in terms of quality and quantity of natural resources and the same quality of environment as we enjoy now. So it shouldn't be worse than it is now. And this was a very kind of smart move by the authors of the Our Common Future report, because indeed it is very much in the tradition, in the culture of the humankind, of most of the societies, to take care about our kids, our grandkids, our grandkids, to make sure that, you know, they have some kind of good memories about us, that they feeling good and so on. Like in most cultures, that's always presented as a good thing, that, you know, you are planting an oak with a hope that your grandson will use it to build a new house, this kind of thinking. So in this sense, indeed, this idea of intergenerational equity was a very smart move, and it was one of the reasons why this definition and the very idea of sustainability and later on of sustainable development, why it became so much widespread and became very easy to explain, at least to those who want to listen. So you see, in this definition, we have, it is very short, it is extremely concise, but it kind of conveys a lot of stuff. In contrast, let us look at the definition that was offered in the 7th European Union Environment Action Programme. It says that in 2050, we will live well within the planet's ecological limits. Our prosperity and healthy environment stem from an innovative circular economy where nothing is wasted and where natural resources are managed sustainably. And biodiversity is protected, valued, and restored in ways that enhance our society's resilience. This definition, quite a different thing from the previous one. First of all, you see that it is extremely detailed. It provides a very high level of detail on what we believe sustainable, what we believe the actual target of our sustainability action. And in principle, it doesn't contradict the previous one. So there are obvious reasons why the second one is so much detailed. This is a policy document, unlike this kind of visionary document that the first definition is coming from. This is what the European Union wants to put as a target for 2050, that what European Union wants to explain to the humankind and to its own citizens is kind of what we want to achieve and what are the key concepts and key, let me say, there are indicators for us to be there. So our economy should be innovative, circular, nothing is wasted. Natural resources are managed sustainably. Well, I guess that's in terms of intergenerational equity indeed. Biodiversity protected, valued, restored, and our society's resilience is enhanced. Still a lot of vague stuff, but at least we get some precision here. And in the core of this definition is the following, that we live well and within the planet's ecological limits. So we get here two concepts which are the central to what sustainability is. And basically, when we're speaking about sustainability indicators, then I guess it means that we need to make sure that, you know, they're depicting that something that is well, yeah, how well the situation is, and how far we are from ecological limits, or actually whether we are crossing them. So, like, basically, with our indicators, we need to deal with one or both of these things, living well and the ecological limits. Speaking about the ecological limits, I must say that we have a lot of wonderful developments. We learned a lot about how to measure the state of ecosystems and how healthy the environment is. There are many approaches for doing this. The most simple one is, for instance, counting organisms, species, habitats, or biomes. Most of environmental monitoring programs are basically based on this. And it's pretty well understandable why. Because with relatively simple measurement program, we can get a very comprehensive understanding of what is going on with particular ecosystems, with particular habitat. Just if we speak about counting the species of phytoplankton in water bodies, in samples from water bodies, then from species composition and from the biomass, from potential production data, we can tell very surely, actually, what is the ecological status of this water body and what are the actual trends of this water body, what it is becoming. Is it kind of, is it like eutrophication process there is going on intensively, or it is in the steady system? So that much we can get from such relatively simple thing as counting organisms. So, like, it's indeed not simple. It needs a lot of professionalism, some good equipment, and knowledge of hydrobiology. Yet, at least the concept itself is very much straightforward. Then another thing we can do, and we increasingly do these days, is measurements of concentrations and fluxes and the estimations of stocks based on those measurements. On the picture on the right side, you see the fragment of Eddy Covariance Tower. It is put somewhere in the middle of Russian taiga in Siberia. This one belongs to Siberian Federal University in Krasnoyarsk in Russia. And what this thing does is just a big tower in the middle of the forest. And in this tower, you see a lot of all kind of analyzers. So gas analyzers, so they analyze what kind of gases are going through this point. And also you see some meteorological equipment. So actually it gives information about what is the intensity of the fluxes. And knowing the concentration and the intensity, you can estimate the stocks. And when you know stocks in and out, then you know what is coming from the system, what is going to the system, and what is the outcome. So that is also very much straightforward. It gives us immediate understanding why we deploy this kind of system, and it gives us awfully a lot of information. Say we know everything about the photosynthetic capacity of this forest and about all kind of environmental disturbances, and we know what is the carbon sequestration potential of this particular ecosystem. Then we can measure, quantify dynamic behavior of the system. So basically, in this case, we combine our observation with some good theories, and we build models. Say the model of all the models of climate change, they usually belong to this category. We have some observation, we have some theoretical understanding, and based on a lot of practice, how the global climate system works. We built a model based on this our knowledge, and then we have quite good understanding where climate is going, although indeed also there is a huge diversity of climate models, and many of them are questionable, but yet we have kind of global consensus, which we can read about in IPCC reports, about what climate change is about, and what are the trends, and where it's going. And yeah, it's also kind of very useful information about how far we are from the ecological limits of our planet. Then we can use proxies. This is also a very old method, and very much kind of quite straightforward actually, and much respected since very old time ago. On the picture on the left, you see one of those proxies. We have information about global oxygen isotope in bottom sediments, and using this information, we are getting understanding of what was the climate in previous epochs. From very early time when those bottom sediments started to be created. More kind of easy thing, and also extremely informative one, is using of tree rings. This piece of wood, I made a picture of it in the lab of the National University of Mongolia in Ulaanbaatar, and this is a very beautiful piece of large wood, and it shows actually what happened with the ecosystem where this larch was growing since quite a long time ago, since 18th century actually. And where tree rings are wider, it means that the tree growing conditions were better. So basically it means that precipitations were more abundant, and the warmth to cold ratio was reasonable. Where tree rings are narrower, then it means that tree growing conditions were bad, and sometimes you see darker spots, for instance, near 1823, or for instance, at the beginning of 20th century. Those dark spots, they usually indicate that those periods they had some forest fires. The large tree managed to survive, but still it remembers this forest fire. So this is also extremely useful method, and it gives us good understanding about actually what the ecosystem dynamics was, and it helps us it adds to our observations and helps us to build our models, and then again understand how far we are from the breach of our ecological limits. So far, things were complex enough, but if we introduce value-laden perspective to the ecological limits, then things are getting even more complex. Say, whatever we're speaking about ecological limits, this, first of all, something about our human and not holistic at all perspective on what is good in the state of ecosystems and the state of global system, and what is bad. And we need a kind of bridge between our understanding of good and bad, and between the ecological data we have. And for this, we need to introduce values. And one of the most common ways globally of these kind of value systems are ecosystem services. I'm pretty sure you know a lot about them, but this is just one of those very popular pictures depicting what ecosystem services are. Commonly, they are classified in 3 groups: cultural, regulating, and provisioning. And basically, this concept is telling us what the nature, what ecosystems can provide to us to maintain our existence as human beings. And we can measure indeed everything we receive as material benefits. We can also express this in monetary terms, and this is kind of indicating system. Many policymakers and many stakeholders understand much better than any other measurement results. You're just telling people how much money they lose if ecosystems are deteriorating, and it's perfectly clear to anyone. Indeed, if the losses exceed the benefits, then we have to do something about it. Yeah. So going to living well. Living well is also something the humankind and the best minds of the humankind were thinking about for quite some time. And Aristotle speaking about those, actually most of his philosophy was centered about understanding of what is living well, what is well-being, and why we consider certain things as well-being and others not. And however, this concept is also in use by sustainability scientists. And as early as in 1998, in the report by Meadows, you can find the following words. The concept of well-being encompasses individuals' capacity to achieve happiness, harmony, identity, fulfillment, self-respect, self-realization, community, transcendence, and enlightenment. So you see that actually in sustainability literature from quite early times, we can see a lot of categories which are rather philosophical, like happiness, identity, fulfillment, what it is and how we measure this. And all those categories, they're extremely tricky. They change a lot for different societies. They depend a lot from the specific context those societies are in. And even within some societies, different groups, social, professional, religious, they may have quite different understanding of what is living well. Moreover, even within the same social group, different age groups, they also have very different understanding of what is well and what is not. Say on this picture, you can see my daughter Lisa. She's 3 years old here. She just neatly escaped a visit to odontologist, so she's extremely happy about this. And on the top of this, she also received an ice cream. So no human being was happier on the earth at this moment. But just imagine, like in 20 years from where this picture, when this picture was taken, I doubt whether Lisa would be so much happy about not getting to odontologist. Probably it rather would be kind of problem rather than happy thing for her. And I doubt that even ice cream would help her to feel better about skipping the odontologist. When we're speaking about the environment, then indeed we can speak about, say, urban environments. Yeah, if boys of the teenage can enjoy wetland in the middle of the city. It's kind of a very adventurous sport where you can do a lot of wonderful things when you are a boy 12 years old. Then when becoming an adult, you're not happy about this wetland anymore because it's stinking, like it has all kinds of mosquitoes. It doesn't look nice enough to you, and you prefer to have something probably less wet in this particular spot. But when we're speaking about sustainability indicators, then indeed we need also to think about these differences in the perceptions of what is well and what is not well. We have to think about different groups, social, professional, religious, and then indeed also the age groups. So like sustainability indicators, they should be inclusive, and we are going to talk about this a little bit later. When we're speaking about living well at national level, then things also can be quite different in different nations. The example I like really a lot is the national program of de-eutrophication of the lake of Balaton in Hungary. You see a picture from Balaton on the picture on the left. And the situation with eutrophication on the lake of Baikal in Russia. You see the picture from Baikal on the right. Both lakes, they're absolute marvels. Balaton, well, indeed, it is more kind of common thing. It's just a shallow lake. It's very beautiful. It has very interesting origin. It has very interesting landscapes on its coast, along this coastline. Also, a lot of interesting cultural landscapes. You can see here the peninsula of Tikhon on Balaton. It is wonderful. What happened to Balaton some time ago, from 60s and especially in early 70s, in Hungary, they found that Balaton is becoming not as nice as it was. And you have to know that in Hungary, for Hungarians, Balaton is an extremely important thing. It is present a lot in poetry. It is kind of important part of the national identity, and like for Hungarians, it's kind of unthinkable. One can imagine to be without Balaton. It's not only for them kind of lovely and beloved place to have a summer rest, but also something they're proud of as a nation. And when they found that the heavy eutrophication is underway and the Balaton is becoming absolutely unswimmable and looking not nice, on the level of the government, the consensus started to emerge that probably we need to do something about it. And this something can be quite costly. So basically what they did, they launched the eutrophication program on the lake, and they put a lot of very heavy management efforts on the watersheds, to halt the eutrophication. Also along the coastline, absolutely any kind of discharge of water to Balaton was forbidden. So anything should have become circular. And because only a portion of the watershed was in the national territory of Hungary, and the rest of the watershed was in then Yugoslavia and partly Austria, it was understood that probably Hungary cannot manage all the watershed, and they introduced, they established a kind of national park in the upper part of Balaton called Kish Balaton, where huge wetland was constructed, and all the water brought by the Dana, the biggest tributary to Balaton, was treated, like slowly going through the constructed wetland. And also all kind of motorized vessels, they were forbidden on Balaton, except several ferries going across the lake. So, and that efforts, it was kind of immense burden on national economy, but that paid back. Balaton started to recover, and now it is quite nice, and it's absolutely swimmable and enjoyable, although it is kind of very shallow lake, which is very easy to get eutrophied. Baikal in Russia is a very different story. It's a huge lake. It's very deep. In fact, it is the deepest lake in the planet, on our planet. And Baikal has, unlike Balaton, extremely clear crystalline water, and it is famous for this. And like an important outcome of this is that Baikal is very easy to eutrophy with absolutely tiny amount of eutrophication agents in the lake. Because the whole system of Baikal, it is so vulnerable and so much adjusted to low mineralization and low eutrophication rates that actually whatever is happening in water, any kind of tiny amounts of biogen substances introduced, nutrient substances introduced, it causes immediate growth of phytoplankton and all kind of algae you do not want to grow. And what happened with the Lake of Baikal, it used historically to have several environmental issues. Very well known one is important story with the pulp factories that were started to build by the Soviet Union in the late 60s. And for the society of the country, for academics, and for kind of all ecologically minded people, they found very quickly that this pulp production facility is deteriorating the quality of the lake. It was stopped, and it was one of the first achievements of the environmental movements in the Soviet Union. And after this huge pulp production was stopped in 2000s, in the millennium, actually, more or less our time, another problem started to emerge on Baikal. It was explosively growing tourism. And what happened actually that Baikal indeed was an important tourist destination at all times, but still the tourism was quite limited. But nowadays, over 1 million people are going to Baikal every year. And hospitality facilities on Baikal, they are not really environmentally minded. Kind of everything, all kind of nutrients, this tourist crowd and generating, it goes immediately to the lake. And we see now the process of the transformation of the lake ecosystem. And we see now that Baikal is getting eutrophied and the ecosystem is getting deteriorated. And this process of ecological deterioration of Baikal, it is quite well recognized. There is a lot of literature about it, and we can imagine that the government of Russia is very well aware of what's going on. But we cannot see any considerably helpful efforts to improve the situation and to halt eutrophication on Baikal. And this is kind of an interesting case. We know that Baikal is very important for Russian identity as well. You can hear something about Baikal in the lakes, like in songs, in folk songs. Like anyone in Russia knows very well that Baikal is kind of a thing totally unique, and this is kind of, it belongs to the humanity because like it's so special. And at the same time, and we can imagine the society in principle would agree to take some cost for improving the situation. But just nothing happens basically, and the situation is getting worse and worse every year, especially now when we see some growth of the national tourism in Russia. Yeah, kind of an interesting contrast with Hungary, and where this action was taken when the early warnings were recognized early enough, and the situation was improved. And why I'm talking about these amazing lakes, when I'm spending our time on these stories, is that when we are speaking about sustainability, and when we're speaking about sustainability indicators, then probably we need to be kind of visionary and aware of what kind of society our indicators are created for. And one thing for some societies can be recognized as kind of good and not making them so much unhappy, while other things are different. And I'm still myself puzzled about these two cases, and when I compare them, I'm really want to understand what went wrong, say, in the case of Russia. We have a paper with Kalev, actually. It's forthcoming, probably in a couple of months. And if you're interested, we will be happy to share it. It is basically contains some discussion about the situation on Baikal, one I described now, and where it goes, where it leads, and the general sustainability governance context of this situation. So, speaking further about living well, we also have a recent paper here, also with Kalev involved and some other colleagues from our university. And outside of it, we have compared two national parks in Estonia. It was Karula National Park and it was Sebersky National Park in Russia. And what we have found that people are feeling themselves substantially happier in Karula in Estonia than in Sebersky National Park in Russia. And there were many reasons about why people in Karula thought that they are living well, and in Sebesh they didn't. But the main one, as we have understood, was that in the very management agenda of national parks of Russia, the management of cultural landscape was not part of it. And there were no meaningful ways for local people who are living in the national park, and there are many villages in the national park, actually, in Sebersky National Park. There are no meaningful ways for them to get involved to natural resource management and actually to benefit from the natural resource management. So you cannot do any kind of even limited forestry. You cannot. You are extremely limited in any kind of agriculture you can do. Like there are huge restrictions for you to develop tourist business and so on and so forth. And these opportunities are basically they're present in Karula. Indeed, in Karula also we have identified a lot of issues that made people unhappy enough, but yet the level of happiness in Karula apparently was much higher than in Sebesh. And this is also something to think about, and this is also something to consider in our sustainability plans and in our sustainability indicators, that different kind of even such simple things as different approaches to management agendas in national parks, they may have immense impact on the society and on the understanding of the society, what is living well and what is living bad, and actually also on the sustainability management in these two areas. For instance, in Karula, because like for people, the national park and its resources, it was part of their life, the people were happy to contribute to park management even in their free time. While in Sebesh, people mostly agreed with this only if it is paid activity. So you see that even in terms of natural resource management, what is your agenda and what you allow to people, what you permit and what you not, it's a very important thing. And this is also something very important to be mindful about when we do sustainability indicators. So there are many indexes, many kind of known indicators existing over there to measure what is living well. For instance, per capita income, it's kind of very common one. It's believed that the more money you have, then probably the happier they make you. Another one is GDP. It's kind of a very popular one. It's measured for every country, and you can say directly whether this kind of country is richer or poorer, and we may assume very kind of in very indirect way that if GDP of a country is higher, at least till a certain level, probably people in the country are happier. Well, probably not, but yeah, at least. Gini coefficient. This is a coefficient of social disparity in the country and the gap between the richest and the poorest. And we can also imagine that if the social disparity in a country is lower, then perhaps also the society is happy in this country. So if you don't have this huge gap between the rich and the poor, then probably it's a happier country and people in this country are happy as well. It is also kind of very indirect indicators, and it's not necessarily that much straightforward as it sounds. For instance, probably many of you would be surprised to learn that the country in the European Union with the highest Gini coefficient, it means with the highest gap between the poorest and the richest, is Sweden, which is kind of normally considered quite a happy country where people have access to well-being and wouldn't have too many reasons to complain. Nevertheless, so we should be careful. This story is teaching us we should be careful with sustainability indicators, and we should understand that probably they work only till a certain threshold, and further on they don't. Then we can put forward availability of public services, amenities, and sanitation. This is also something which is usually relatively easy to calculate. Most countries have this in the national statistics, and this data is easily available, and they also may give us some understanding of how well people in the country are living. Indeed, there are some composite indexes that are trying to put together different kinds of indicators and to come up with overall ranking. Say, perhaps the most famous one is the Human Development Index, or HDI, which is developed by the UNDP, United Nations Development Agency. It is developed for all the countries in the world, and between some countries, there is kind of actual competition between, like, are they higher or lower in this Human Development Index? And we can find that many countries that are trying to break the system a little bit to achieve high position using relatively easy tricks, which do not actually lead to improved quality of life, but help to move up in these global rankings. Nevertheless, so on the bottom you see what is the structure of this Human Development Index, and there is a global ranking for each of these components and for the overall Human Development Index. And we can hypothesize that if the country is higher ranked in this index, it means that probably this society is living well. So also, like, nice indicators, it's not better or not worse than any other. Indeed, we all may understand that all these kind of indicators, they have huge shortcomings and deficiencies, because probably, well, in many countries and many societies, people can be happier having less than people in the countries where people have more. And to demonstrate this, I would also like to mention gross national happiness. This is the indicator developed in the Kingdom of Bhutan, and it was brought forward by the King of Bhutan and then developed a little bit by some researchers in Bhutan. This indicator probably has some good potential, but at the moment it's not very useful to globally. One thing is that Bhutan is a very special society, and it is so much different from any other societies. I saw that I would not recommend definitely to follow any practices from Bhutan in a very straightforward way. You really first should understand what is behind, and should see whether it is something acceptable in other contexts. And the other thing is that because this indicator was brought forward by the King of Bhutan, and this is kind of more or less in terms of Bhutanese people, divine thing, it's still not very well developed, because King is a very busy person. He didn't have time to develop it well, and others, they wouldn't have too much courage to work too much with something that the King developed. So it still stays in a rather rudimentary condition, but potentially it's an interesting approach, and it is definitely worth further consideration and some scholarly efforts. And I already mentioned that things can be integrated, and there are many attempts to do this integration. I talked to you about the Human Development Index, which was the attempt of integrate this living well component of sustainability. And this is on this picture, on this slide, you see one of the efforts to do this integration on the level of both living well and the ecological limits components of sustainability. This index, which is the Environmental Performance Index by Yale Center for Environmental Law and Policy, is perhaps the most famous one. And it is based on a huge amount of data people in the Yale Center are collecting through the year. And on this picture, you can see the overall structure of this index. Based on this on the scores they receive when analyzing this index, and you see the relative value of the scores on this picture. They get a global ranking, and again, looking at this ranking, you have some understanding what kind of countries are ahead and what are the countries are beyond in terms of environmental performance. Indeed, like any composite index, it always has its disadvantages. They always quite disputable, and you can always tell that they do not represent the reality 100% correctly, but it is this nice attempt. And the amount of such indexes, of composite indexes, is really overwhelming. But as I mentioned on one of the first slides, it doesn't mean that they really have big impact on the policy agenda nowadays. Oh, and also something I want to draw your attention to is the importance of participatory process when we design our indicators. I already mentioned Donella Meadows sometimes before. She wrote a very influential, shows the lead of the very influential book called The Limits to Growth. It was the report of the it was the report of the Club of Rome, and it was immensely important for the global environmental movement. But also Donella Meadows, she did quite nice work about sustainability indicators, and I really love this her book published in 1998, which is called Indicators and Information Systems for Sustainable Development. This book, as you see, is quite old, so like older than probably some of you, but it is pretty amazing, and it still is very fresh, and it is extremely interesting and extremely insightful in case if you want to do something yourself about sustainability indicators. And in particular, I love in this book these sentences. The indicators a society chooses to report to itself about itself are surprisingly powerful. They reflect collective values and inform collective decisions. A nation that keeps a watchful eye on its salmon runs or the safety of its streets makes different choices than does a nation that is only paying attention to its GNP. The idea of citizens choosing their own indicators is something new under the sun and something intensely democratic. So basically, the my message here is something I tried to convey on my first slides, that you should be extremely aware of who are the users of the indicators. And we should be aware of why these indicators for, and what are the limitations of the indicators. And please, if you're interested in the topic, look again into the list of criteria for good indicating systems. You have everything Donella Meadows had in her mind when writing this, and if you keep with that criteria, you have good chances to come up with a nice and robust indicating system. But also please be aware that already on the Earth there are so much indicators that probably you should think twice before coming up with some new indicators. Indeed, when we're speaking about for instance, some local communities and some very specific projects, it does make sense to come with indicators for this success of this project and to measure success of this project. But if you are talking about the global important indicators, then indeed we should be very careful. And if you want to learn more about how to run a participatory process for developing good indicators, my strong recommendation in this paper by Laszlo Pinter and his friends on the largest 10 principles for sustainability assessment and measurement. In this paper, they review quite nicely what is the state of the issue, and also they offer very detailed step-by-step recommendations of how you can do good indicators. So my time is running out. I guess that's it. We have still some time for questions, although not too much. Please ask some if you have them.
Thank you, Anton. It's time for the questions. Then, Anton, could you give some examples? What is one of the best sustainability indicators? What could be used at the national level? And could you give some bad example what has been used?
Well, bad examples actually is a much easier thing. Most of indicators which are used at the national level, they're quite bad. At least they're not looking very much convincing. You know, there is a musical anecdote about this, like one of the members of the symphonic orchestra is talking to the other member of the symphonic orchestra that, you know, I had a wonderful night dream this night. I was sitting on the bank of a river, and on this river, coffins were passing by, and in each coffin was a conductor. And another member of the orchestra told him, but there are some nice conductors. Sure, there are some nice conductors. Nice conductors were in nice coffins, bad conductors were in bad coffins. So same thing about the indicators actually, and you cannot tell about that. You cannot say that any of them perfect. All of them, they have a huge amount of deficiencies, but at least you see that some of them are more usable and some of them are less usable, which is also a very important thing. Any kind of composite indicating systems, they're very easy to crack. Like in case of international, globally recognized indicators, this is even kind of easier. For instance, wonderful story I really love a lot is the story about the doing business ranking. Not exactly sustainability indicator things, but still it gives some useful lessons. Like doing business was globally important because it's measured what countries on the planet were easier to do business and which ones were more difficult. And it was expected that in those countries which were easier, those countries were better in terms of investments. So like they're more welcoming investments. And it means that any countries on the earth, they were trying to improve their own doing business score. And even in some governmental programs, you saw that it was a target of the government specifically to get higher by a certain number of positions in this global doing business index. And what happened, because this index run by the World Bank was so much important and so much influential, that again, many countries, they tried to skip, to cheat a little bit on this system and to make some decorative changes in the system to make it kind of, to make its own position better without actually improving the situation for business in the country. And you could see that such countries, for instance, as Belarus in this doing business register, they were higher in the ranking than Estonia, which is absolutely kind of, well, reasonably suitable for business country, while in Belarus, you really should be a heroic person to enter business. And if you don't have like very special relations with certain people, yeah, you better do not start anything big. So you see, and that any kind of composite indexes based on a lot of data, based in a lot of different kinds of data, they're kind of very fragile in a sense that they need to be revised over and over to see if all those kind of cheating opportunities are removed. When we're speaking about sustainability indicators, usually, indeed, we do not have this kind of purposeful cheating. But what happens a lot, because the situation is very dynamic and kind of new environmental challenges, they are appearing all the time. What's happening is that we need to see whether this index, this indicating system, whether it is actually accounting for the new and dynamically changing situation. So, and in this sense, I wouldn't say that we see lots of good examples. Well, it's not because the science is bad, but just because like sometimes apparently the whole indicating system is easier to remove and make up a new one rather than revising the old one. So it's kind of a very tricky question you just asked. What I believe in very simple and straightforward indicators. Say, if you want to know like what is the state of biodiversity, then you go and see what's the state of biodiversity. You look at fragmentation of habitats, you look at what is the abundance and composition of species. You look at actually probably at some management and governance dimensions to understand actually how things are going. Probably you look at what the society is thinking about the certain species. Say like if everyone is hating wolves and telling awful stories about them and wants to remove them from the country, while wolves are so rare and potentially not posing any change, any kind of the challenge to the society, that probably wolves are endangered even more than they are, judging from the composition of species. So I'm more for kind of this kind of very narrowly targeting action rather than huge composite indexes. Many researchers and many policymakers love so much.
Thank you, Anton. Any other question?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah. Yes, please.
Actually, it's not really a question because I really share the idea that Anton sharing here. It's just to say about the sustainable indicator or environmental indicator, it should be simple and measurable. But in the other hand, is quite a subjective. What is can be considered as sustainable. It's just sharing this that in Vietnam, we already had once think of they develop the environmental indicator for the country. And we had the kind of the conference or meeting and asking the experts about what kind of indicator can be included in this. And we come up with a list of nearly 100 indicator and indexes. Because each field also consider this one is very important and should be considered in the country indicator. So I'm not quite sure in the practical point of view. Do you think that's how to come up with general, simple, measurable, and compatible? There's other country or in general we can come up with. And to develop this kind of sustainable indicator, what do you think about this?
Oh, that's a good question. Basically, that's a kind of question I tried to answer with all this lecture, and you see that it's not an easy one. Like I tried to answer, but as you noticed, actually, I put more questions than answers because it's still kind of
I know
something which is not very straightforward in many ways. It's really a very tricky and complex business. Again, what I believe is that we better do kind of sectoral, more narrower indicators than ones that look at the whole huge thing. And indeed, some very complex composite indexes, they also can be potentially useful. And if you have good science and good expertise and good involvement of all the stakeholders who are very clear about why they need these indicators and what they want to learn, then probably even we can risk with composite indexes. But here we again have one little danger, which is extremely common and which we find a lot. Like many people, when they do models of something and indicators are indeed the model of the reality, they start to mix up the reality and its model. And kind of, especially for policymakers, as I can see, this is something that happens a lot. Once they're given some kind of easy way to measure something and what they believe an easy way to measure something, then they absolutely disattach this measurement system from the actual reality that is measured. Like an example, very well known to the academic world in this respect is, say, like our KPI for our academic efficiency, for instance, Hirsch index. Like indeed, it has its value and it demonstrates something, but also at this stage of development of this affair, I already have my doubts, like Hirsch index is rather harmful or useful thing, actually. As it is used now in many countries and in many institutions as a kind of absolute indicator of you as efficient academic. And here the same thing with the indicators. Indeed, go and create some. They are useful to understand how well you're progressing with something. But then again, you should be very well aware that this is just a measurement system. This is just a kind of model of the world. It is not the reality, the actual reality you measure. So I believe that keeping this in mind, you have good chances to come up with something useful and not very harmful.
Okay, thank you. I share your idea.
Thank you, Anton. Are there any other questions? Then, Anton, you are listed the criteria for the good indicators. Could you list the criteria for the bad indicators?
Well, you know, I'm a very lazy person. So like what I would do, I would just look at the list of the good indicators and just put forward something which is opposite to good. Say like good indicators are simple, bad indicators would be too complex, not straightforward, and not clear to even to who has developed those indicators. Say, I remember when I was a PhD student, I had great knowledge of everything and was totally confident that this knowledge is greater than those of my professors. And I was very fond of coming up with all kinds of indicators. They were so complex, so amazingly beautiful that, you know, I was lost in their complexity myself. And I can tell for sure that those indicators were bad. Indeed, the indicators, good indicators should be measurable, and when we're speaking about bad ones, they would be unmeasurable. So basically, you would come up with all kind of qualitative stuff you cannot really quantify and you cannot really measure. Like, especially if you go to the level of feelings, how good and how bad this is. Bad indicators, they're not feasible. So you can come up with amazingly precise and amazingly kind of how to say it, accountable kind of indicators that really showing very well the state of the system you want to measure. But if you just don't have means to measure this, if you don't have right equipment, if you don't have right expertise, then this indicator is absolutely useful. You have nice report and you put it on the shelf. Then a good indicator should be flexible. So basically, if you don't have data which is exactly needed, you should be able to replace this data with any other available data which is still reflecting on the state of the system. If your indicating system doesn't account for this, then probably it is also not a very good indicator. Good indicators, they should be dynamic, and so they account for the changes of the system over time. For instance, if the system goes beyond the threshold which we have imagined for this system, then good indicating system, they account for this, and bad, they don't. And indeed, good indicating system should be user-inspired, so the actual users should understand well what is behind and why they need it and how they're going to use these indicators. And indeed, bad ones, they do not account for this. They just, you offer them to users. They don't have any clear idea how to interpret these indicators. They don't have clear understanding what this data is coming from and what to do with this. They perhaps have a nice report about these indicators. They can show this report to whoever is asking about this, and that's mostly the main function of this indicating system, not the actual use by the end users. So, any other questions? If you're feeling shy, you also can type your question in the chat, and we'll read them.
It seems that there are no more questions. So,
okay, probably through our discussion we cleared so many doubts already.
Yes, and would you like to ask? Oh no, just my microphone on. Then our time is also over, I think. Or Sergey, you would like to ask something?
I'm sorry for my English. Anton, would you know about the work of Russia biophysic Viktor Gorshkov, biological and physical fundamentals of life? And
I heard about it.
And would you use this approach in your work, in your report? Sorry.
I heard about this work, and it was when I was still PhD student back in my time at Belarusian State University. I saw a lot of citations and references to this, I believe, amazing work. But unfortunately, I didn't have opportunity to read it myself. Any knowledge is useful and applicable as long as people can use it. Judging at least from what I know about this work, unfortunately, it's not too much. I can imagine that it would be useful for describing many systems, but unfortunately, that's it. What I can tell right now. I believe that I'm still ignorant person, and I have to read much more. And especially now when I don't really have access to literature in Russian, sometimes it's a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey, and thank you, Anton. Our lines are still open for questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
It seems that we can finish here. This wonderful series of seminars are now over. I would like to wish to you and to your families Happy New Year, many adventures, happiness, and love. And I really hope that we also will finalize successfully our intense project. Then the best greetings to everybody, to the partners in Vietnam, in Mongolia, in Ukraine, and in other countries. And we hope that when we will finalize the intense project, then we will have new opportunities for cooperation. Then Anton, please also say the final word. You are the great manager of the intense project.
You're too kind, Khalif. Yeah, what I can do is just to repeat what Khalif just said, that we are at the end of a very long journey, and now we have to make every effort to do good reporting. And indeed, I was very happy to do this work with you, and Happy New Year. And let's the next year be better than this one. And well, still. And I do hope that we'll have opportunities to see each other in the next year. And indeed, we'll have opportunities to cooperate further on something interesting and exciting. So Happy New Year, everyone. And thank you for being such wonderful partners.
Thank you, Anton. It was very nice time to be with you and all of you. So thank you very much. Yeah. Happy New Year for everyone. Yeah.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, thank you a lot. So I'm stopping the recording. I'm